Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Cultivate and Keep. This is Jeremy and Corey.
Hey.
Hey, sorry, I know you wanted to
Dang it, dude.
jump in. You were excited, man.
I was so ready to say,
you were like,
I'm Corey.
and I said Corey.
That's right. I got it down.
Well, I was going to think it's awkward when you're like, I'm Corey.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Jeremy. It's kind of like, we got to flow.
Robotic. That's right.
Anyway, well, hey guys, welcome to the episode, to the podcast. This is the second one of 2019.
Hey.
So we're excited for the year. We have a lot of good stuff. But today we want to talk about the myth of being qualified for a job.
Quote unquote qualified.
Quote unquote. And before we dive into that, I just want to say it's kind of nice to just not have any announcements, because normally it's like,
yeah.
hey guys,
dive right
first
in.
we want to, now it's just like right into it.
Hey guys. Exactly like that.
Kyle here.
Kyle here.
Very few will know that's from. But anyway, so we just kind of wanted to share our experiences with this and kind of our personal testimonies of how this applies to us, and then we'll talk a little bit about just the idea of being qualified for a job and a myth that a lot of people kind of limit themselves by and stick to,
Yeah. So the context is that I think a lot of people think that they can only get jobs they're, quote, qualified for.
Mm-hmm.
And qualified usually means that I need to meet all the requirements of the job description. I need to have the number of experience, the degree, the education, the certification, whatever kind of the job experience is, the industry experience, in order to get this job. So most people go through the jobs and they look for the ones that they're qualified for,
Mm-hmm.
but that they think that they can get,
Yeah.
which isn't a terrible strategy. But the reality is that you don't have to be qualified for a job, and that most of the jobs that are placed, people are unqualified for technically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're kind of talking about today, is not that you can like get any job that you want and like become the CEO of Google tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
but like don't limit yourself by the requirements that are on paper, because that's not really how the world works today.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we're gonna share. We're gonna share kind of our experiences. For me, I'm gonna share like details of kind of my work experience, kind of where I've come from, where I am today. I wanted to share kind of in depth my experiences and kind of go from there. So
Go for it.
I've actually never had a job, like worked for someone besides like the family or myself, which is kind of like in the past I was kind of embarrassed about that. Yeah, I mean I don't know if I would say embarrassed, but like I wouldn't volunteer that information. I wouldn't. I wasn't quick to share that. Like I don't know. I think I often would get miscredited because, or not. Yeah, discredited.
Because daddy gave you a job.
Because daddy gave me a job. No, exactly. People think that, and so it kind of had me a little bit in a spot of like, I'm not going to share this. If you ask, I guess I'll tell you about kind of thing, Or like a fun experiment I did was whenever I worked. So when I did work at Le Bon's, the family business, anytime like I would meet a new client or like a competitor, I would never say I was the boss's son. I'd always just say, "Oh, my name's Jeremy." Like, yep.
Yeah, don't make that mistake.
Yeah, and so it was fun because people would often like, like badmouth like Le Bon's or like my dad, but they wouldn't know I was like, boss's son, and then it was great to be like, oh, by the way, it's my daddy. But anyway, so I think for a long time I was like under the pressure of like just the negative connotation that it has, like being the boss's son. Like when you think of the boss's son, more times than not, it's like a negative thought. I mean, I'm assuming that's probably how like most people think. I know in my experience, like those were my interactions. People often had just negative feelings automatically about me before I had any chance to prove myself. It was just negative, and so
you're talking about like coworkers,
customers, competitors. I mean, everything. It was just, oh, you're the boss's son. Oh, I want to take a step back, like that kind of thing. So for me, my experience, I pretty early on was in a job I was definitely like not qualified for. The job I held, so when I was 18, almost 19 is when I became an account manager, and it's not like a super complicated job. Like after that, now that I've done it, I think like anyone.
Wait, how old were you?
I think I was almost 19.
19.
Like 18.
And what does an account manager do?
So an account manager is different in every industry, but like the general theme that would go across all industries is like an account manager is basically in charge of managing the success of relationships with a client. So your job is essentially keep your clients happy, and so you handle all requests, complaints. Your goal is to retain them and then hopefully generate more leads for your marketing team. So that was kind of my job, to keep clients happy. Yeah. So in a nutshell. And I was for sure like unqualified, right? I didn't have like the degree that I needed. I didn't have the certifications. I didn't have the experience. But at the time when I took over the job, there was a need. The person we had quit, and so I had to step in. And so right away, like being the boss's son, being really like the youngest person probably like in the industry in that position, like it didn't look good, right? It's like, oh, this
the odds are stacked against
this
you.
kid was given this job was kind of like the general like theme people felt.
Yeah.
And it's just funny, like as like the boss's son, like that outlook, people think like it's easy. I mean, everyone probably thought I was like the highest paid person. They probably thought it was just handed to me. Most people don't think I had to work hard. Like that's kind of just like the assumptions people make.
Yeah. You
like,
have a throne at your desk and you get pampered with.
I mean, we're laughing, but that's like literally like things that I like faced.
Yeah.
But like the reality is like it's so different from that, and like I don't think people like really like understand. And so, from my experience, like that's kind of what I was in. I was actually underqualified, but I was in this position. So for me, it was kind of like, this is where I am. Like, so what am I going to do with it? Kind of, that was always my approach. But one thing I always kind of, like a few things I wrote down of what I experienced was like coworkers, like new coworkers automatically like didn't respect me. That was what I experienced. But this is not like, this is before they had any idea who I was and like my work ethic. They just, like, again, oh, you're the boss's son. Like, let me, back up from you. That was how like most people are. Most people that I worked with over time, like we became friends and, I had their respect, but initially it was the opposite. Like being a boss's son, when you fail, everyone knows that you fail, and it's just known. Like people like to kind of point that out, and like I have like memories that come to mind, like when I messed up, like it was like everyone knew about it, and it was like funny, whatever.
It's the talking point of the company or for the day.
Yeah, like
did you hear that Jeremy? Blah blah.
Super small example, but at my dad's house, this was like right when I became an account manager. So I was like barely 19. He just had like artificial grass put in at his house, and me and Nick actually were having a fire. Shout out to Nick Loudon, and we were having like a little like bonfire in the backyard. And I'm not sure why, but we like moved the fire off of the pavement onto the grass. Don't know why. And it's like a foot and a half off the ground, so it's like obviously the heat is gonna melt the grass. But we just for some reason did that. Right. So we put the fire pit on the grass, and we're out there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And when we pulled it off, the whole like under the fire pit was all black and like melted, and it was like probably like 3.5 feet by like 3 feet. It's like a good chunk. That weekend was like our company Christmas party, and my dad, for the whole company, like announced like what happened, and then as a joke, he told everyone that I tried to make the fake grass come back, so I tried watering it, which I obviously didn't.
That's a great joke.
That
your dad got you so bad.
Yeah, but that's an example, right? I messed up, everyone knew, and it was like
that's amazing.
It was funny. I was severely, not severe, that sounds weird to say severely. I was extremely underpaid, like for the whole time I was there. The job I had, again, like I said, I want to share details, but like the average industry pay was between 50 and 85,000 a year. It was like a standard like base salary. I did the job for about a year and a half at $13.50 an hour, and over like the course of 4 years of being 4 more years in the job, like I got little raises, like little by little. But it wasn't until my very last year being there, after 5.5 years, I was raised to 50,000. Like that's the base salary. It took me like that almost 6 years to get to like the starting pay for the industry. And I wanted to share that detail because like I was underqualified in this position, but like that was the reality of it for me, largely because I was underqualified. I didn't have the experience. My employer, felt it was just to underpay me for that, right? I'm not speaking like directly, like at my, like when I say employer, I don't like my dad. I'm just like in general. Yeah. I think in the workplace, people face that they're not qualified, so their employer will pay them less than the starting pay.
Totally.
And that I don't think that's acceptable. I don't think that should be the standard. I think if you can do the job, you should be rewarded. So that was one thing I experienced. Like again, that mentality of boss's son, overpaid. Like no, like far from that. Like most of my people that I managed were like way above what I was getting paid. And I remember like guys who would often ask me, you probably get paid. And I remember a few times I just told them I got paid, and they literally did not believe me. I'm like, this is the reality. Like this is what I am against right now, kind of thing, So there was that. Again, being like underqualified in the position and being young, I had to really compete hard. It was kind of one point I wrote down. Like we had 5, so there's 5 account managers. I was one of 5, and I was like obviously the youngest. Most of them were double my age, and so, everything for our company was very like public. So every like territory we called them, all like your numbers were exposed. And so however like I did like my retention, my
that's right.
sales, like everyone saw what I did. And so I just made it my goal basically to outdo everyone. That was always my goal. And so like that meant often like being the first one there in the morning, the last one to leave at night. Like I had to work hard and work long to like compete against my competitors, or not my competitors, but like my coworkers. And like again, most people like want to recognize or think that. And then lastly, I want to put down, I think this is an important one. I think people think as like the boss's son, that stereotype, that I think people think that the path and the trajectory for like you being at that company is like very clear. Like you know the plan to take over. It was like the opposite of that. So when I was in the process of leaving Le Bon's, and I was like interviewing for jobs, I was interviewed for a job, and like on my second interview, they gave me like I think it called like a growth chart, or like I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
But it was like a 10-year like step. Like in 10 years, like you follow
wow.
these steps, and here's where you'll be. And it was like a chart, like all this stuff, and it was super clear. Like I had nothing like that when I was working with the family business, and I think in most jobs, or if you're not like family, like that's a common thing to have. Like, you know, very clear expectation, and I just didn't have that. And I'm not trying to like slander or like talk down on my experience with my family business. I'm just like sharing like the details of what actually happened. And I think I've talked a little bit about like owning my own business now. So I'm not going to go into details on that. But I think with like both of these areas, like I was like underqualified. Like I wasn't really qualified to be in the job that I had at Le Bon's. And then now, like owning a business, like, yeah, I have a degree and I have like some work experience, but the truth is like I'm not qualified for what I do. But it doesn't mean like I can't do it. That doesn't mean that I can't do it well either. And that's how I think that we talked about in the beginning, a lot of like it's easy to be in the mindset of like we think of our options, we think of like careers or like jobs we want to pursue, and we first look at, okay, what are we good at, what are we qualified, and then we start like looking from like there down. And I think it's a good place to start. Like it's a good place to start, like thinking like, you know, what are you good at and what are you qualified for? But that doesn't have to like limit us. We really can do I think what we talked about, like what we feel called for or like passionate about. But the reason why like I share those details, because I think the reality is if you're gonna do a job you're unqualified for, I think there are some like negative consequences. I mean, like for me, like a lot of what I experienced was because I chose to go into a job I wasn't qualified for. I had to face like a lot of opposition, and so again, like that's why I share those details, because that's the reality of it. At least for me, it was, and I think, you know, people would have different experiences, but like for me, like that's kind of what it meant. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a lot. But I don't know if you have any comments or questions, but
I have more questions after I share mine.
Yeah.
Because I think it'll relate better.
Yeah.
But so my experience with being unqualified is about 2 years ago. I was about to graduate from college, and I didn't have a degree yet. And so I was looking for jobs, and I was trying to figure out, like, I knew I was about to be engaged to Monique, and I knew that I was going to graduate soon. So I figured I had to start planning for like what I was going to do after college, what kind of job I was going to get afterwards. And I'd kind of like wavered, you know, in the beginning of college, like I'm going to do accounting. And then like by my sophomore year, I was like, I want to do financial planning or financial advisory. And then by my junior year, I kind of figured, well, actually the college I went to didn't have an accounting major. So I decided to switch to marketing. And then after that, then I kind of like adopted the marketing kind of stuff. And I figured I'd do something in marketing or business development or even sales. And so I started looking around, and one of the first jobs I can look for was something like an agency. So I found this really neat job in North Park, you know, San Diego is like a super trendy area, at an agency that works with e-commerce stores that are on Amazon.
I remember this.
Yeah. And I was super stoked about it. Like, looked at the job and I was like, you know, like I'm kind of qualified for this. Like, I think I can really get it. So I got on the phone with this guy for like a phone interview. And within like the first, you know, it was kind of your classic, like, well, tell me about yourself. And so I was telling him about, you know, where I was born and, you know, what I wanted to do. I was going to college. And then it being I kind of like exposed that I hadn't graduated college yet. And he was like, wait, so wait, can you not work full time yet? Like, you still have another semester? I was like, yeah. So like, it wasn't clear on the application, and he just cut me off. He was like, oh, sorry. Well, we're really hiring for someone full time. Like, call me back when you're graduated. And I was like, okay. And then like, he hung up. was like,
I remember you like telling me that
oh
story.
my gosh, I just got hung up on
That
in
was
an
your first like
interview.
experience, huh?
My
Like,
first experience trying to get a job
that
outside of college.
sucks.
So I was like, this kind of sucks, and that really,
This kind of sucks.
yeah. Well, it really made me realize like it's so hard to
Mhm.
find a job that you're qualified for,
Mhm.
and especially in the business world. I mean, you never like had to go. Well, no, you did actually. You did have to go look for a job after you graduated, and for me, it was so daunting because you go look around and you think like, I'm prepared now. I have a degree. Like I've done an internship or two. Like I'm ready to tackle whatever it is. And then you go look at all the job descriptions, and you like check the box to filter for like entry level or like like starter kind of positions, and you look it through there and you start realizing they all say like 3 years relevant industry experience and like MBA instead of just bachelor degree, and it'll say like must have proficient skills in Excel and X, Y, and Z, and use this software
The
and use that
biggest lie on
software.
everyone's resume ever.
Yeah, right. Like all the things
Yeah.
proficient in Excel and Microsoft Suite. But I was like, wait a minute, like 3 years experience. Like, how would I have 3 years experience if I just graduated college? Like, I go to college and so I can get a job to get experience, but they want me to come out of college already having experience, even though I haven't had any experience. It doesn't make any sense, right? So I was like, wow, like that's when I realized I'm gonna be unqualified for any job that I try to get, basically. So then I started looking around, Googled best places to work in San Diego, started going through all the websites, looking through other career pages, found one here in San Diego for a company called Cordial for a marketing intern. Um, emailed him, submitted my resume and my cover letter, applied, and then that Thursday I got hired on for the internship. But again, the same thing, except it's a different experience where the job description was like graduated, MBA preferred. You have like these skills, this experience. You've worked with other startups before. I didn't have any of that whatsoever, but I got the job.
Because you lied, right?
No, yeah. I lied about everything. No, but I didn't lie. Actually, I think the thing that really got me in the door was my cover letter, because the prompt was basically like, what does marketing mean to you? How do you think about things? Like, what would you recommend for us? So I just wrote like a 1-page, really concise thing of what I thought it was. And apparently it was like far and above anything else that anyone else had written, which is surprising because I didn't think it was that good. But even then, I realized, so I got the job, and then I realized even more, well, if I'm unqualified for the job and I got the job, that means that pretty much everyone else who was applying for the job definitely wasn't any more qualified than me, because then they should have gotten the job, right? 3 months later, my internship wraps up. I graduate college, and then I get a full-time job as a marketing manager at a software startup. And this is like and I didn't really know it at the time, but that's so unusual, because usually if you're a software startup and you raise what's called venture capital, and your growth is like a hockey stick and you're just going up and to the right, it's exciting, you're hiring people. We had just raised $6 million in investment, and I was the first kind of marketing person hired on to the team. Literally didn't have a single day of experience. I just got a bachelor's degree in marketing from a no-name college in East County, San Diego. Like, there was literally no way that I could ever be qualified for that kind of job. But again, I think the tough part about being very unqualified, I think everyone is unqualified for the job that they do to some degree, but the tough part about being really unqualified for a job is, like you said, like the odds are kind of stacked against you, and you have to fight other things. You have to fight expectations. You have to fight being the underdog a little bit. You have to fight kind of other people's perception of you a little bit, and you kind of have to manage that a lot. So I spent 2 years there, got a lot of great experience, did a lot of things that I was unqualified for. I ran my first ads. I was writing blog posts. I was managing, I was sponsoring conferences and setting up booths and traveling, to Chicago and San Francisco, all things that were like, hey, can you go do this? Or like, hey, do you think you can manage this? It was always like, yeah, sure.
I'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out. Yeah, I've never done this before, so we'll see what happens, but I don't know. Like, how it's going to turn out. And then it always ended up turning out pretty well. And then, I'm only 2 years into my experience outside of college, and a job recommendation or a job kind of posting comes up for a company that I've followed for a long time. And I'd been following the founder for a while, followed the company. They were very well known. I didn't know how big they were, or how much, how big the team was, but I knew that they were kind of a big deal. Like, they had a lot of good brand, and a lot of people knew they had a good reputation around the industry. And so I figured, what the heck? Like, I'm happy in my job, but I've done well, but like, I'll just apply. And this job was for the head of growth for this company, which is like no longer kind of your entry level kind of position. Like, it's sort of like a leadership position. And I was like, there's no way that I'm going to get it, but I'll just apply anyway, because if there's any job, I might as well. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Ended up talking to him for about 2.5 months, exchanging emails, doing some phone interviews, talking a lot back and forth, submitting some ideas, and ended up getting the job out of what I'm pretty sure were like at least 1,000 applicants. And he didn't, interview that many. He probably interviewed a couple dozen. But I'm 2 years out of college, and I managed to grab a spot for the head of growth, which is a leadership position at a really well-known software company. It's like pretty unheard of. And I'm not saying that to brag at all. I'm saying that like as shocked, like as being shocked myself. I can't even still believe that I get the opportunity to do it. The job and the funny part is that, so for that company, he had a really great job description, didn't have any hard and fast requirements about like degrees or certifications or experience or anything like that. Most other ones do. Most other ones, like a company like that, would require an MBA. It would require 5 to 10 years of industry experience. It would require, a bunch of recommendations from executives at big companies. It would require like very like, a strong track record and a personal brand. And there was no way that I could ever be prepared for the job that I'm doing now. And so now I get to do it, and I'm doing great. I think,
You think?
I think, hopefully, things are going well, and I'm happy with what I've done so far. It's only been a month, so there's a lot to go, but I think, and so like we're at really cool places now, because I'm at a job that I really enjoy, that I've kind of dreamed of for a while. You're now a business owner and doing, awesome stuff and growing the business. I have a bunch of new ideas. But I think the funny part is like that it could have been anyone. Like, there's nothing special about us at all. You know what I mean? Like, I think that one of the cool things that allowed us to get jobs that we're really unqualified for is just putting ourselves in unique opportunities and unique positions in life to be able to kind of snatch it up and do it. And like, hey, Jeremy, like, there's an opportunity to buy a business. Like, what do you think? Like, you weren't really thinking like, I want to buy a business this year.
Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, way different from what I was planning.
Yeah.
So,
I wasn't even thinking like, I want to get a new job. I'm not happy here. I was just thinking, what the heck? What's the worst that can happen? But because we put ourselves out there, then things happen. So,
well, I think it's interesting as you're talking that so even after, you said you graduated college and then you had over 2 years of work experience in this industry, and then this opportunity came up, like, and you're still unqualified, right? And for me, like, same thing. I worked where I went to college, so I had more like working experience, but still, after almost 6 years of like 5.5 years of work experience, like, still just not qualified for this new opportunity. But not looking at it and saying, oh man, I'm not qualified, I'm not going to do it. But like you're saying, just kind of, here's opportunity and kind of doing it. And like, now there's like the fruit of that. There's obviously hard, but I mean, it's, now we have the opportunity. So, I think it's interesting, like, thinking back, because as you're telling a story, like, I remember you telling me like, oh, hey dude, like, I just found this company in Hillcrest. Like, I remember you like showing me photos of it. And I remember when you, I feel like everything you've done, Corey, has been like a step up. Like, and by that I mean, so that was your first, like, you had your eyes on that job and you really wanted it. And it actually like looks super cool when you showed me photos.
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure it's a great
that's
company.
Like trendy and like fun. It looked cool. But that didn't happen. I remember you were super bummed. And then Cordial came along, which was, I feel like, obviously like a better step for your career.
Oh, it definitely was.
And like hearing about it, and again, like seeing photos of it and all that, and like, the company like was clearly better for you. And then like now, a couple years later with Barometrics, like kind of same thing. It's a smaller company, but it's like more the direction you want to go. It's more narrowed. It's it's like a step up in kind of your ranking and where you're at of like responsibility. Like, and you're doing what you want to do. You want to work from home, so you're like that much closer from like starting your own business. And so it's cool just to look back and like see like the steps. But like you said, each one came with an opportunity. I think you should go into detail about how you found Barometrics, because you followed that company, but then didn't he posted something, right? And then you reach out to him, and that's how it all started. That's right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he was back in like May or June of this year. So I got hired in December. So about like 6 months before I even got hired, he started posting around on Twitter, asking people like, hey, I'm looking to hire someone in some sort of marketing or sales kind of role. Like, here's the context where, I think there were 7 people at the time. We're doing like, X amount of revenue a year. Like, what would you recommend? And, a couple of people said like, he was like, well, maybe I should do like a sales development guy, or maybe I should do like business development, or maybe should I do like a content marketing manager, which are kind of all more like entry level kind of positions, kind of marketing manager kind of positions. And then everyone was like, no, you should hire a head of growth, head of growth. Growth, because which is kind of like the theme. And a growth in the tech scene is like a blend between sales and marketing. And and so I saw that, I think, oh, that's interesting. They're probably gonna hire someone soon. And then he posted around a couple more times in between there. But then in September is when he made the job posting. And then it was, for a head of growth. So I kind of already knew like where he was coming from a little bit, and what he was looking for, and, all the things that people had said. And then funnily enough, and let me know if I'm answering your question, but like during the interview process, for kind of each stage that everyone was passing through, you'd ask Twitter again, like, what kind of tests can you run a marketing person through? Or like, what are the right questions I should be asking? And he would just post it kind of openly and publicly. And so I was watching as it happens, like, oh, like, I wonder if I made it kind of the next round. And then sure enough, he'd email me again with the same things that people on Twitter were saying, or the same things that he was responding back to people on Twitter.
Now, didn't you, back in May when he had that post, didn't you comment on that?
I think I might have, actually.
I remember you telling me you did. Remember you said you commented, and then or you guys were emailing or something.
Yeah.
And then I think he asked you if you wanted to apply. Remember that?
Oh, okay. So.
And then you were like, I think you said no, right? Or you're like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. So when he made the recommendation, when he made the job posting in September, I was really excited for them, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, and then I had just had like this flurry of like ideas.
Yeah,
and so I just like started writing them all down. And so then I was like, well, I should just like send it to him. Like, why not? So I emailed him. I was like, hey, like, not looking to apply, but just thought I'd like throw this by your way. Like, I hope this helps, in some way.
He was like, you sure you don't want to apply?
Yeah. So like I sent him all these ideas. He's like, oh, this is really cool. Like, are you sure you don't want to apply? And I was like, and then I like right after that I applied, and then he emailed him back, and I was like, actually, I think I will. Like, why not? And he's like, oh, like super glad. Like, okay, we'll be in touch soon. So I think that also helped, like emailing him even before I applied, and like kind of provided a lot of helpful, advice and guidance based on my own experience, and just kind of like put myself out there of like, hey, hope this is helpful for you. Like, no, you can use this however you want. Do with it, but like no obligations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that story is super cool because I remember for a while, like, I mean, you were content at Cordial and you liked it, but I remember like you had been talking about for a while, like wanting more, like you want more responsibility. I know there's like a lot of change with like management, and so for a while you just talked about wanting kind of the next step, and like this kind of funny because this opportunity didn't like really come your way. You in a sense kind of like stepped into it, like you saw it happening. And I think even like in that, there's something we can pull out of that. Like, I think just being involved in like your scene or your industry and kind of like keeping up with things is like a good place to start.
Oh, totally.
If you weren't active on Twitter, weren't involved in like these kind of news feeds and kind of these areas, you would have had no idea like this was happening. So you saw that happen, but more than being like evolved, you reached out. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, I think the way you did it was like, hey, like, can I have a job? No, you just kind of gave advice and, oh, here's my 2 cents. And then sure enough, like, that sparked his interest, and then like here we are now. So I think it's a super cool story, and I think just like that's like an example of kind of going after an opportunity, and like making it happen. So that's super cool.
A cool analogy that I always remember, and I always tell people when they're asking me, or like, hey, I want to get a job, or I think about going to this, like, but I don't really feel like I'm qualified, or like maybe I'm not going to get the job, is that like quite literally, if you look at job recommendations and you look at job posting, job descriptions, and all the different requirements that you need to be qualified, if you only did the jobs that you were qualified for, you would never move up. So think about, like, if I, for example, my very first job out of college or out of high school was at Jamba Juice. If all I did was what I was qualified for, then I would still be making smoothies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, for every new job, you have to do things that you're unqualified for. Or if you're a janitor and you're sweeping or you're cleaning, like, you're never going to do anything else besides be a janitor if you never do anything that you're unqualified for. Like, being unqualified is actually a very natural thing in your career.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's scary. Like, it's hard. I mean, it's not like it's uncomfortable. For me, when I was transitioning out of the bonds, I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, and so I kind of started like looking for a job, and like that was my first time experiencing that, and it's hard. Like, filling applications and kind of like your resume and looking through stuff. Like, everything is kind of daunting, and like
takes a lot of time.
And it all seems like I felt like consistently like I was not good enough for this. It's kind of how I felt. Like every job just kind of felt like well above my head. And the one job I was looking into, it was like a financial like advisory role. And what I found was, after like I got in the process, and I think it's good to say, like I think most of the time it's not as like hard or like as big and bad as we think it is. Once you start doing it, once you kind of get talking with the recruiter whoever's hiring you, like you'll find that most times they're really cool, they're really friendly, and it's just not as hard as you think. And so that's what I experienced, and I ended up like not doing it. But I mean, I got to the spot to where like the job was offered to me, and the whole process was really cool. It was good for me to do. I got to like learn how this kind of thing goes. But it wasn't as hard as I thought. I remember thinking like, I'm never gonna get this job. This is gonna be super hard. And the guy was super cool, and it was a great experience.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is just taking a step and like just doing it. And kind of like you said, like seeing the opportunity and like stepping into it.
Yeah. Part of the hard part too is that like hiring managers and employers don't really make it that much easier for you either, because usually the jobs that they put out there are for people that don't exist. They'll make just job descriptions and requirements of people like who they don't even know of. Go find a person that has these requirements. Like, they're not going to find them. You know what I mean? Like, they don't exist. So people often like, oh, we want someone who, has spent 10 years in the industry and has an MBA, and like they're putting together like this perfect person, but they don't even know if that person really is out there or exists. The other thing too is that for a lot of times, and this is kind of embarrassing for a lot of companies, they just copy and paste their job description from another job description they found online. Just a random one, just another one. Like, oh, this sounds good. This will help us find someone that's good, regardless of whether or not they're a good fit or whether or not it's accurate. But people always usually hire, or they describe a job as if it's this very technical, advanced, because they're trying to filter out kind of people who are maybe like too unqualified for it. But the reality is that they know too that the people that they're going to get aren't probably qualified for this job or the way that they're describing the job. So you have to know, like, it, and maybe it's a good thing too. Like, if you're qualified for the job, maybe you should look for something better or higher up in the organization too. So you never know. Yeah,
well, it's good. I mean, it's like, in a nutshell, kind of what we've talked about is that you can get a job you're not qualified for. I think more times than not you won't be qualified, but you can do it. But what we talked about, especially like early on in your career, like that's with that comes like difficulty, right? And being an underdog.
You have to be willing to.
Yeah, it's just not going to be easy. But and I think another kind of theme is that I think the theme is like, you're in a sense you may always feel unqualified and like not. You may not be ready for that job or position you want or that you may get, but it's kind of just a part of the process. So.
Yeah, I think be expectant that you're going to be unqualified, and then learn to be okay with it. Yeah. And learn to always be okay with being unqualified with the things that you're doing. So yeah.
Fire. Take us home, Corey.
All right, I'll take us home. Get in the car.
That's weird, dude.
Creepy. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments, feedback for us, feel free to message us. You can email us at cultivateandkeep.com. Share with your friends. Leave us a rating and review on iTunes or anywhere else that you listen to your podcasts. You can also check out our blog at cultivateandkeep.com/blog. That's a whole bunch of other stuff. But in reality, all we really want you to do is share this with one of your friends. So appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Peace.